if I'd had to write a job description, it would have been that. It was one of those where I was just kind of, I saw it and thought, oh God, if I don't get this, then now what am I going to do? Was then able to kind of move, as I worked in it more, move towards kind of specialising in an area that I was really kind of passionate about, which was sport. But I guess it was lucky it was Manchester City, but, I would have worked in any sports team or club or, retailer or media, everything was on the table at that point. I wasn't just like, it's Man City or nothing.
G'day guys, coming up with the show today is Tom Wilkins. Tom is the head of research at City Football Group. If you haven't heard of City Football Group before, you've definitely heard of the clubs they own and operate. Think Manchester City FC, Melbourne City FC, New York City FC, Mumbai City FC, and 9 other clubs across 5 continents. Tom's role as head of research sees him working across many projects that are initiated by all the departments of City Football Group, and there is a lot to look out for in this episode, including what goes on behind the scenes at City Football Group, how Tom landed this dream job for the club that he grew up loving and supporting, plus the art of moderating and research. And always, there's a lot more. Let's go.
I started volunteering.
It's all about who you know in sport.
Am I going to be calling the last 10 seconds of the grand final?
You can connect with the interviewer. The hand goes up when they've got to make a decision.
Having a network is one of the most important things you can do.
I didn't necessarily follow my passion. I followed my curiosity.
Once you've worked in sport, there's no going back.
And then lo and behold, before I left, I got offered 2.
Hello and welcome to the SportsGrad podcast, the ultimate guide to make it in the sports industry, brought to you by Deakin University, the #1 school for sports science in the world. My name is Ruben Williams, and I am an ex-Cricket Australia employee who now has turned my attention to helping people get jobs in sport, which includes this podcast where every week I chat to people about what they do, what makes them great, how they broke into the sports industry, and tease out all the different insights that can help you get your dream job in sport, no matter what that is. And then behind the scenes, we also run a membership called the SportsGrad community. Where we are constantly connecting listeners and job hunters with people in the industry and helping them get closer to the jobs and closer to the people who look after the jobs that ultimately help them end up working in the sports industry. If you want to check that out, head to our website, sportsgrad.com.au/community. Now, the Olympics are done. And last week, if you listened to the show, you would have heard a few people who are on the ground at the Olympics in Paris. And next week, I'm going to be taking you through my insights from the games. I was there for 17 days in Paris. It was absolutely amazing. Saw a lot of cool things and have got some comparisons after having been to the Olympics and the FIFA World Cup, 2 FIFA World Cups, a couple of different Cricket World Cups, Grand Slams around the world. And now I've been to an Olympics and I can compare it to all these other major events. So I'm looking forward to sharing my insights with you next week. But for today, we are taking a quick sidestep away from the Olympics because the Premier League has just kicked off again in the UK. And I was super, super lucky to get connected with Tom from Manchester City and to have him come on the podcast. Now, this is the first time that I've had someone who's currently working for one of the big major European clubs on the show, and there really is no bigger powerhouse in world football than City Football Group at the moment. And so I am just so excited that Tom has given us his time and come on the show, and I'm excited to take you behind the scenes and share his role with you. It is kind of ironic that Tom has come on at this time because Manchester City are playing Chelsea in the opening round, and I am a big Chelsea fan. I'm not a bandwagon supporter back from when they were good. I was actually born in the hospital that sits on Fulham Road, about 800 metres up the road from Stamford Bridge. So I am a Chelsea football fan through and through, by birth, you might say. My family's not English. They just, mum and dad just happened to be in London at the time. But I'm going to the game this weekend. It's going to be the first time that I've ever seen Chelsea play, and they just happen to be playing Man City at the same time. So hopefully when this episode comes out on Monday, the Blues have come away with the points. But nonetheless, I was very happy to chat with Tom and hear all about his experience at Manchester City. And so I can't wait to share this episode with you. Until then, if we're not connected already, you can find me, Ruben Williams, on LinkedIn and on Instagram. I'd love to connect with you there and hear what you're up to. And if you're looking for a job in sport, ping me a message. I'll see how I can help. Or if you're working in sport, message me anyway. I'd love to hear what you're up to as well and see if there's some way that we can share your insight and expertise with those looking to come through too. Otherwise, if you are looking to break into the sports industry and you would enjoy a quick email every Friday, we send out the latest job opportunities, networking events, and Q&As with industry professionals and the latest podcast episodes as always. And if you want to stay up to date with all that, make sure you are subscribed to the SportsGrad newsletter. To jump on that, head to sportsgrad.com.au/newsletter. There is a link in our show notes to join. Until then, grab a pen and enjoy this chat with Tom Wilkins. Hey guys, just a quick break to ask you, do you want to study at one of the top universities in the world for sport? That's what I did at least. At Deakin, you can do just that, and coming up in August is your chance to do so. Don't miss the opportunity to see what sets them apart this August, where you can check out their state-of-the-art facilities. Honestly, they've added so much since I was there. It looks amazing. You can hear from world-class academics. Jonathan Robertson, he's still one of my favourites rolling around, and you can connect with current students and experience the Deakin vibe that they are famous for. Search Deakin Open Day and get the inspiration you need to plan your future in sport. You can also win a share of $4,000 of prizes just by registering, so you'd be silly not to. The Geelong Open Day is happening down on Waterfront and the Warren Pond campuses on Sunday the 18th of August, 9am to 3pm, and then up in Melbourne, the Burwood Open Day is happening on Sunday the 25th of August from 9am to 3pm. See you there. Tom, welcome to the SportsGrad podcast.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
Tom, we always enjoy sharing how we get some of our guests on the podcast, and yours is a particularly interesting way. It wasn't a usual reach out on LinkedIn or friend of a friend. The way we got you on the podcast actually started with a good friend of the show whose name is Sunil Menon. Now, some listeners may know Sunil from episode 241, I think. He's the head of community at Melbourne City Football Club. And on a trip to Manchester last year, Sunil connected me with the club and arranged for me to go on a stadium tour, which was outstanding. And then months after I'd left the UK and got back to Australia, I received an email from yourself asking, hey, Ruben, I understand you did the stadium tour. We're doing a piece of research. Would you like to be involved? And that's what I learned, that head of research is a role inside a club. And I thought, what a job. We have to get you on the podcast. So welcome.
Yeah, no, thank you. I guess it's a pretty small world when you kind of put it like that, and how you can connect with people inside the industry.
That's it. Now, Tom, we always start our episodes with some quick fire questions so that people can learn a few fun facts about yourself before we dive deep into your job. So the first one I'll fire off is, what was your first ever job?
My first ever job would have been a paper round. So I guess I was way too young to have a paper round. I wasn't allowed to, but I did it with my brother, who was a couple of years older. And it was like every Friday night we'd have to go and deliver the papers. And it wasn't very well paid. But I actually seem to remember him not paying me half and just giving me like a third of the pay as well, which that was first. And then I also had kind of summer jobs. I worked in a garden centre for a while in the plantarium, despite having absolutely no plant knowledge or skills. But yeah, just a few things like that to get some spare cash.
And what did you study at university?
So at university, I did modern languages. I studied French and Russian, which was amazing. I had a chance at school to learn those languages a little bit. So I carried on when I went to university. And that was an amazing experience because I got to travel as part of that as well. So I had a year abroad as part of my 4 years at Nottingham. So I spent 6 months in Paris and 6 months in St. Petersburg, kind of working and studying. So yeah, amazing experience.
And is that French going to become useful during the Olympics? Have you got plans to go?
I haven't got plans to go. And to be honest, neither of those languages has been useful in the 15 years or so since I've finished university.
I'm very impressed by anyone who knows a second language. And your favourite sporting moment?
Okay, yeah. So this is an easy one as a Manchester City fan. So I was lucky enough to be in the stadium when Sergio Aguero scored the 93-20 goal against QPR in 2012. So yeah, I think football kind of peaked for me that day, and so it's a difficult one to kind of top. But that was, as you can imagine, that was unbelievable, and I think one of the best moments of our life, let alone kind of sporting moments. It was an incredible day.
Oh, 100%. Arguably the best moment in Premier League history. So it'd be very, very hard to top that. And when you stack up the Premier League against all other sports around the world, it's got to be right up with the best of the best.
Yeah, it still gives me goosebumps when I watch the highlights back, and I can't imagine how awful it was with the 90 odd minutes before that. Like, I'm glad I don't have to go through that again. But it was, I guess it was where you got to go through the lows to get the highs.
Amazing. Oh, well, you're the first person I've met who was there in the stadium that day. So that's awesome to learn. And do you have a favorite interview question that you like to ask of candidates?
Yeah, so I think what I like to do, as much as like the usual kind of interview questions you would ask about, tell me about a time that you overcame adversity or those sorts of things, I really like to try and find out what people are like and whether they're going to be a good fit in the team. So I like to ask people what their kind of ideal weekend looks like. And I think part of the reason I like to ask that question as well is because I was asked it in my first interview for my first job. And I said I'm a season ticket holder at Manchester City, so I'd go there. And I think the person who's interviewing me was also a season ticket holder at Manchester City. So I think that probably pushed me over the line in terms of getting the job. But I just like to know kind of a little bit more about the person behind, because I think anyone can answer like your stock interview questions well. You can like learn answers to those, but trying just to find out a little bit more about the person behind that. And I don't think it's a question necessarily that you'd prep for. So yeah, I think that's one I like to ask people.
Wonderful. And what's one book or podcast you'd recommend that's helped you with your job?
So I would say a book called Factfulness. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's by a guy called Hans Rosling. It's an amazing book. I'd recommend it to everyone. It's basically about like the stats and why we think the world is worse than it is. Whereas if you actually look at the stats and the reality of things, it's actually much more positive. And there are reasons why we think it's bad, but if you actually look at the underlying numbers behind it, we've kind of never been living in a better time and never had a kind of more positivity. So it's a book that helps you kind of look at the different fallacies that are out there that give it like that might bias our thinking, and helps us kind of understand what those are for when we're actually trying to understand things. So yeah, Factfulness it's brilliant. I'd recommend it.
Nice. A good one for you, whose role is important to keep a level of objectivity with everything that you do. So we'll add that one to the list.
Yeah, exactly.
What's one platform that you use at work that you couldn't live without?
So I really like using Miro. I don't know if it's pronounced Miro or Miro, but it's like an online whiteboard tool. And I think nowadays, especially with people remote working and doing a lot of kind of virtual meetings, I think it's an amazing tool to kind of do live workshops with other people. You can everyone can contribute at the same time and everyone can see each other contributing. But it's also just really good as a space for you to kind of brain dump. And if you just want to kind of go through things in your own head or make notes, it's just there. It's not on pen and paper. Yeah, it's one I really like and kind of use every day. Over the past couple of years, it's become really kind of useful for me.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Miro as well. Spelt Miro for those listening who want to check it out. I noticed that I used to do a lot of stuff on whiteboards or on butcher's paper, and whenever I was finished, I'd used to either have to throw it out or take a photo of it before I wipe it out. And so since going to Miro, it's still there, just lives in the cloud, and we can carry on from where we left off.
Yeah, and it seems to be kind of getting even better as well with like the AI functionalities that are on there. You can write like 100 Post-it notes and then it'll summarize them into a sentence, into a paragraph for you. So it only seems to be getting better as well. So yeah, I love it.
And if you had 30 minutes to pick anyone's brain, who would it be?
So I think I'd be really interested in talking to one of those people who's just like a sports person who's kind of way above and beyond anything we see and kind of behaves like it as well and just acts completely differently. And the one who kind of jumps into my mind is Tiger Woods. It's quite an obvious answer, I suppose, but he just operates on a completely different level. And I think the kind of the type of person he is, the mindset he has, the drive he must have. But I'd love to just be able to just kind of get an insight into like how he thinks and how you get to that kind of level of golf, because it's an entirely different sort of mindset than I think most of us have to be able to get to that level and then stay at that level and just kind of exist at like a higher plane of kind of sporting achievement.
Yeah, and one, from what I understand, that was developed at a very young age. From what I've learned about Tiger, is that he's dad pushed him really, really hard from basically as soon as he could hold a golf club, which has led to, the mentality that he's got in his approach to everything now. So he would be a fascinating one. But yeah, I agree. Maybe one just to deal with in doses.
Yeah, and I think it's probably that kind of upbringing has, it's obviously brought benefits in like the sporting sense, but I wonder like what the impact of that is in other aspects of kind of personality or, be interesting.
Nice. All right, well, let's dive into your role now. Now, when people look you up on LinkedIn and see head of research, I'm guessing the first question they think is, what does that look like? So can you share with us, what does that involve and what an ideal day looks like for you?
Yeah, so I guess we have a research team at City Football Group. So City Football Group, where I work, is the organisation that owns Manchester City and a number of other football clubs, including Melbourne City, and we have New York City FC, and we have clubs in Spain and Belgium and France and Uruguay and Brazil, etc. And I guess the research team is part of a bigger team, which is part of like a research and analytics. So all kind of own data within the business, fan data that is. But my side of it looks at like fan research, so understanding what the fans are doing, what they're thinking, how many of them we have, where they are, how we can make our current fans' experiences better, and how we can get more fans in different markets, etc. It's a real kind of cliche to say, but like I think there's no day is the same. We have a number of projects that are ongoing that kind of exist on a day-to-day basis, and we're constantly collecting data, but we have like a never-ending stream, or seemingly never-ending stream of kind of ad hoc projects that come in from different areas of the business. I guess in many ways we're like a research agency, but within the organisation. So anyone might come to us with a question about the fans, and it's our job to be able to either answer that through knowledge we have, or do some data desk research to find out, or primary research to kind of find the answers. So that might be someone in media, it might be marketing, it might be in ticketing, content. Anyone who has a question about the fans can come to our team, and then we'll work out the best way to get them an answer.
Why does this role exist at City Football Group? Because this is the first of this kind that I've come across. And perhaps it's more typical for it to be, as you mentioned, an agency, an external body. But why does your role exist at City Football Group?
Yeah, I think it's because we want to be as kind of fan-centric as possible as an organisation. So the decisions we're making want to be made with the fan in mind, and the fan represented in the room when we have those conversations. And our team, it's our role to be the kind of the voice of what the fans are doing or thinking. So I think the decisions that we're making need to be kind of have like robust data behind them. And we feel that kind of keeping as much as we can of that in-house, I think gives us that that knowledge which we can find and then own ourselves to be able to make those kind of better decisions.
Mm. And so I'm thinking about what you guys have done in the past. What have been some of those key projects that your research at Man City has contributed to?
Yeah, so we as a team, we kind of work on a lot of projects around the stadium experience. So understanding what the fans are doing and behaving, and what kind of identifying the pain points of any sort of kind of element of the fan journey, as it were. So it might be in the stadium, it might be buying tickets, it might be logging onto our streaming platform, etc. So there's a lot around identifying and fixing kind of pain points. But then there's also like much bigger projects that we're involved with. So a few years back, we worked on a consultation with fans around changing the badge. So I'm not sure if you remember, but the Man City badge used to have like an eagle on it and 3 stars. And then that changed to having kind of undergone a consultation with the fans. It's moved towards something that kind of more resembled our original crest, which is more kind of circular with the ship and the rose, etc. So it's a real kind of breadth of things, as I mentioned before, from like any area of the business. We might be looking at like how our documentaries are performing and what fans think of those, through to kind of new product development and understanding what fans think of new ideas we have, and then how we can implement them.
So how many of these research projects can your team kind of take on at any one time? Because it sounds like the service you're providing to the rest of the business is invaluable. So I'm thinking like if I'm in any other team, like why wouldn't I come to Tom to make sure that we are verifying our hypotheses in any department. So how many different things can you guys manage on the fly at once?
Well, I think one of the things that we're trying to do is, now particularly is to kind of enable other teams to find the information for themselves. So rather than us having to kind of conduct the research every time, it's more about us setting up systems and processes in place so that the information is there for people to access as and when they want to do it, and kind of training them up on what the information means, what the data means, and how to analyze it themselves, just so we're kind of upskilling across the business and then freeing up ourselves to do kind of more maybe strategic research, or kind of make sure that those kind of projects that we do have are like constantly like improving and not just staying still for the sake of it. But we have a fairly large team across the whole like analytics and insights team I work for. So yeah, there's an awful lot of projects going on at the same time. But I think that would be the case of any agency, really. I think it's just kind of like prioritization and understanding what your kind of timings are and what needs to happen when, and just kind of making sure your project management is really like on point, so that it's not just all coming at the same time. And I think it's one of the challenges we have, obviously, because we run seasonal. So, you know, during the season things are busy. During the off season, I think sometimes other people find a little bit of time to think about what they need. So then they come to us, and we have projects in the off season as well. But there's always pinch points, but we just have to be kind of aware of it and on top of it.
Just going back to your point around upskilling the rest of the business to enable them to do their own research. If we were to dive into the nuts and bolts of what you guys do and trying to pass on to other departments, if we look specifically at the first step of, you know, research with the fans, and you're asking them specific questions, what are some of the key elements to asking good questions during these research interviews?
Yeah, well, if we take the kind of example of like depth interviews, which we do a lot, so we try and like as much as possible sit down in front of people and chat to them, and that might be Man City fans, or like in your own example, it might be someone who's not a Man City fan or who has interest in sports or whatever. And we try and kind of do as many of these kind of fan interviews as we can, just to remind people that there's kind of fans, who the people are behind the numbers, because I think it's very easy to get bogged down into 32% of people think this, or we have 100,000 fans in this city or whatever. But actually showing people the fans, the real people behind that is really important to us. So as I say, we do a lot of those, and I think in those instances, kind of important to have like a good discussion guide in advance that you're aware of, that ticks off all the objectives you want to hit, or your stakeholder wants to hit. But for me, I think one of the most important things is to be able to kind of pivot in those interviews and not just read your questions off one after the other and say, well, you've answered that question, so we'll move on to the next one. And it's to be able to go off on tangents and react to people's answers and take the interview in a way that you haven't anticipated beforehand, because I think that's sometimes where you get the most interesting responses from. So we try and do that as much as possible, whilst at the same time kind of making sure you're not just going completely off randomly, and then you get to the end and you realise you've not got any of the things that you needed to. So it's that balance, I think, for us in terms of having a plan and a guide and the key questions you need to ask, but then being able to kind of just react a little bit as well.
Is there anything that you are considerate of in terms of the framing of your questions, or any barriers that you put on them, or way that you leave them open or closed when you're asking fans questions?
Yeah, I mean, I think if we were doing like interviews, we try and kind of keep it as open as possible. I think one of the challenges we have is that when we're talking to fans, particularly, that, well, it's a blessing and a curse, I guess, is that whenever we do interviews or focus groups or anything, or even surveys, people love talking to us, and people really want to help. You know, like they're talking to the football club they support, and it's an emotional thing, it's passion. So it's not like they're talking to their insurer or, you know, their supermarket that they don't have that emotional connection with. So it's great that people are kind of really willing and open to talk to us and really enjoy and like appreciate the experience of being able to do that, which means that people are really open with us. I guess the challenge is that a lot of people have something that they want to discuss specifically. So it can be, you know, we could be talking about the website, for example. I could be doing an interview specifically about the website, and that person wants to specifically talk about an experience that they had in the stadium last weekend when this happened. So I think it's a balance about giving people the opportunity to kind of have their say and say what they want to do, and then having like the the skills to be able to move the interview around to where you want it to go. Because, as I say, it's great that people just want to have that conversation with us. And I think we see that a lot, especially with international fans as well. A lot of our international fans that we talk to just think it's amazing that they have the opportunity to talk to someone from the club, and it's quite like uplifting to see that as someone who works here, because you can get quite like bogged down in like the day-to-day or in the numbers or whatever. So seeing people's passion up front is kind of really it's really uplifting.
Yeah, I can imagine that would be a common one to navigate. People would get excited pretty quickly, but don't discount the supermarket industry. I've got some friends living in London who feel like they have an emotional connection to the pre-prepared meals at Tesco's and M&S. So, there's some people who might get stuck in those sectors too.
Well, I used to work in a bit more of a commercial role and used to do that research as well. And yeah, like I've seen the level of passion that people have about other things as well. But it feels like football is just sport is just another level, isn't it?
Absolutely. Going back one step before we get to the questions, how do you design a project plan or a project brief? Like, what are the first things that you start to lay out before you even go and find the people to get the information?
I mean, I think the most important thing to do in that instance is to make sure that your kind of brief from your stakeholder is good enough. So we have a project briefing form that we have that has a number of questions on it that will enable the person who's asking for the information to kind of get as much down as possible to give us enough context to understand what they want. So they will tell us what the business objectives are, what the research objectives, what specific questions they might want answered, which audiences they might want to talk to. But at that point, we kind of say to them, we don't want to hear we don't necessarily want you to tell us what methodology you want. So if someone says to us, we want you to send out a survey, we would kind of put that back on them and say, well, what are your objectives? And we'll recommend the best methodology, and it might be more of a mixed methodology. So we would kind of make sure we had a detailed brief initially, which we would run like as an online form. And then when we receive that, I think it's about sitting down with the stakeholder and just making sure you've got a full understanding of what they want and you're all on the same page. You don't go away and design anything until you've kind of got really clear in your head as to what they want. And then depending on the project, if it's a really straightforward one, something we've done previously, then we can kind of just kind of crack on with that. But in a bigger project, we would probably have some sort of kind of like project design meeting within our team, and we would discuss the objectives, we would brainstorm ideas. And I think doing that enables like people to have people with a different kind of viewpoint to feed into it. It means you're not just doing the things the same way that you always have, just because you've always done it that way. And it also enables us to kind of suggest like different like new methodologies that might come into it. So I think it's that collaboration up front. We would kind of really be big on that, and then we would go back to the stakeholder and tell them what we were thinking and what we were doing, and then from that point on, we would then go about kind of designing the specific questions or approach.
I remember speaking to someone who worked in data and analytics, and he said before he would start any of his research, they'd begin with a key research question, like what is the thing that they're trying to solve for? Is that kind of where you guys begin too?
Yeah, so I think that's really important. Like, what's the kind of underlying research objectives? What are the main things you need to know at the end of this? I think I was told in a previous role, it's almost like if you had to write it on a Post-it note, what you want to know or what you need to know, do that. So you've kind of got the detailed brief in the context, but you've also got like the key question that kind of, I guess, drives everything that you're doing, and it's almost like the North Star that you can kind of keep returning back to as you're designing the research, as you're analysing, and as you're kind of coming up with whatever the outputs are. You've kind of got that in mind.
I forget where this quote came from, but someone said in some sort of fancy motivational post that the quality of your life is determined by the quality of your questions, and I can see how that can relate to your area as well. Whereas you start with the wrong question, you're going to get, not helpful insights. But if you start with a good question, that can literally change the direction of whatever you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we're lucky within our team. There's a lot of experience. I've worked in the research team at City for coming up to 10 years, and there's others who've been there like longer, and some we've got newer people as well. So we've got like a real like mix of people in there. And I think over time, we've kind of been able to ask questions better and understand what works and what doesn't. and also kind of what lands, what resonates with football fans, and you know what doesn't as well. So it's about, I guess, like using that experience to kind of to do this and to build the best questions, but at the same time kind of keeping abreast of what's new and what other new methodologies are coming and are out there that we can use to improve on what we're doing. We don't just want to stay still and do things the way we've always done them. We want to kind of keep improving with what we're doing.
I'm guessing that after 9.5 years of working at the football club and your job being centered around asking fans questions, there's probably nobody else in the world who understands Man City fans as well as you do. How do you keep your prejudices or biases out of, you know, the next interview that you've got to conduct? Because I'd imagine, like, with the amount of research you've done, you could probably answer the question that someone's trying to solve in a heartbeat based on everything you've done in the previous 9 years. But to be true to the research method, I'm guessing you've got to go out and find the latest information. So how do you kind of keep all that existing knowledge to one side and maintain that level of objectivity?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's value in looking at what we already have as well. So we wouldn't necessarily always start again from scratch with every research brief that we have. There's some things where we know that people's opinions are going to change. We know there's other things where if we've done the same project a few times, then we can kind of expect what some of the answers might be. So it's a balance between having the context of what you've done before and using that context, and then using whatever new research or new kind of methodology we want to do to build on that and to maybe see how things have changed or explain more of the why of the data that we already have. I mean, I think the objectivity question is an interesting one, particularly for me as a Man City fan. So as a sports fan yourself, I'm sure you know, and you'll have the teams you support, and you read things on forums and on Twitter and on websites, etc. as a fan, and you have your experiences as well. So I get to the stadium every week, and I'm there, and I'm buying a pie and a pint, I'm buying my tickets, etc. I guess it's probably more important to be objective from myself and my own kind of fan experience as to someone else, because I have a very limited fan experience, and I have one seat in the south stand of the stadium, but there's 55,000 other people having kind of different experiences in different areas of the stadium. So I think what's important for me and for our team is to remember that we have to be objective and we have to kind of be scientific about it. And whilst our own experiences can give us context and understanding of what people, what the experiences might be like, we can't just hang our hat on what our own experience is, and we have to get the bigger picture and talk to other people and talk to more people to understand like how those experiences might differ from your own. So just because I've had a bad experience or a good experience doesn't mean everyone else is. So yeah, so there's that. I mean, the other thing about being a fan and a worker and a staff member is like you kind of have double the highs and then double the lows as well. So if we lose one weekend, it's terrible as a fan. Then you're back in work the next day dealing with the aftermath of that. But then, for example, last season, we win the treble, and I've done that as a fan and as a staff member. It's pretty great. So it can be a bit of an emotional roller coaster. It's hard to kind of switch off from it, I guess, when you're a staff member and a fan. I wouldn't change it.
I was actually very impressed with Man City when I did the stadium tour, probably 2 or 3 weeks after the treble had been completed. And when you do the stadium tour, they start you in a room or a section of the lobby that's showing this video introducing you to Etihad for the first time. And within a couple of weeks, the video had been updated to mention the newly crowned treble. And I thought, these guys are straight on to everything. So that was a really cool experience for myself.
Yeah, I think the amount of work that people, they don't see, obviously, like that goes into preparation for end of season and events is crazy. I imagine that was probably the day after, they would have been ready for anything in that moment. So there's an awful lot of things that happen to kind of make it seem as smooth as it is.
You mentioned before the art and science of knowing when to ask the questions you've prepared and when to pivot as well. Prior to this, you mentioned to us that you've done some formal training in the areas of being a good moderator. I was wondering, what sort of learnings do you get out of moderation training? Are there any particular things that have stuck with you that you consistently use today?
Yeah, so I did, so it's the Association of Qualitative Research. They did a 2-day moderator training, and I did that like in my first research job back in like the early 2000s. And it was kind of, I feel like it's a fundamental course that I went on that I still use today. And I recommend that all like my people in my team, my new people who come in, I send them on that course or a similar one. I mean, I think anyone can kind of do an interview and ask questions and conduct a focus group. You know, it's effectively just talking to people. But to do it with confidence, I think you need to have like those fundamentals in place, and you need to have the experience of doing it as well. And for me, that's what the course gave. It kind of gave you I think one thing I'll always remember is like, it teaches you to know your first like 5 minutes or your first 3 minutes. So like, what are you going to do when you start the interview or start the focus group? How are you going to introduce yourself? What are the things you're going to, so if in a focus group environment, you're going to talk about recording the group, you're going to talk about fire alarms and toilets and food and drink and things like that, just so that you've got everything in place so that when you can get started with the questions you want to ask. So that was important. I think it also tells you like the fundamentals of like the process of a focus group or an interview, and how it takes a little time for people to get warmed up, and you need to go through the different stages. So you're storming, you're norming, performing, etc. Until you get to the kind of the meat of what you want to get out of it. So that was really important as well. But I think one of the most important things as well is that it just put you in this situation where you had to conduct a focus group as part of the course. So it put you in a room with 10 other people, and you had 10 other people sat behind the two-way mirror, and you're literally doing it there and then. And I think actually doing it for the first time and realizing it's, you know, it is what it is, and it's not, people aren't out to kind of get you, you know, it's, they don't want you to be stressed because they don't want to be stressed themselves. They don't want it to be a stressful situation. And just having that experience of doing it for the first time, and then, you know, you build your confidence through that, and then you build the more and more you do over time. But yeah, I think it's a really important course for me, just to kind of get that confidence in what I was doing was right, and I'm not just kind of winging it, and I know that there's a process behind it.
Staying with the topic of upskilling, what have you learnt from other industries and sectors, and what do you look out for when you are thinking about what other industries are doing?
Yeah, so I think it's really important to look outside of football for what we do in terms of like a research team. I mean, I think we look at like the US sports as well as a good example of what's happening. But I think there's probably a lot more kind of knowledge and experience and, you know, bigger research teams existing in other sectors outside of sports. I think we're probably kind of nearer the front end of what's happening in sport and football, but in other sectors there's a lot to learn from. So we regularly attend kind of conferences and look to kind of make connections with people from, you know, big organizations who we can learn from. And that might be around like how they built their research team and how they're kind of making their insights land within the business, or it might be around understanding what different methodologies they're using, experiences of working with different suppliers, and like what we can kind of learn from them. I think we're really kind of keen, and I think even within sports and football, actually, there's a real like keenness to knowledge share within like the research sector, which is nice. It's not like kind of on the pitch, you know, like the Premier League, like you won't talk to people from United or Arsenal or whatever. I think we're quite keen on within research specifically about kind of sharing what we're doing, who we're working with, and within reason, I guess.
Is there any particular industry that is leading the way in this space? For example, if you were to look at, say, the function of product management, you might look at some of the big tech organizations that have just got these massive product management teams that continue to evolve and revolutionize that space. What about in research? What industries are leading that way?
I mean, I guess some of the big FMCG companies are the ones who are conducting like an awful lot of research. You know, they have customer satisfaction, they have big brand trackers, they have new product development, they have, you know, satisfaction with the product. So I think like those kind of the Unilevers of the world, for example, are doing huge amounts of research. So I would have them. I mean, I think another thing that we do, which is important for like looking outside of our sector, is kind of less around research and more around understanding kind of what's happening with fans and the future of kind of what football might look like. So in that instance, we do a lot of kind of horizon scanning, as you could call it, where we would look at like tech, retail, even things like automotive, events, and anything where we see what's happening in the world that we could learn from and kind of implement into our kind of sphere as a football team, or not necessarily just a football team, as like a media kind of content creator as well. So we do a lot of that where we look outside the sector, and that's kind of one of the key areas of kind of my role, is to understand like what's happening and what might the future of football consumption look like.
I always find it fascinating diving into people's jobs, because there's always like little nuggets you can pull out from one function that you can draw parallels and take into another thing as well. So yeah, getting deep on this has been really fascinating for myself. And I wanted to get straight into the gold for people to really find out, the breadth and depth of what you guys do quickly. But for people who are, hearing about your job thinking, wow, what an amazing role, I'd love to backtrack a little bit and find out, perhaps after you came out of those language degrees to getting your first job, how did your career transpire to make it to Man City?
Yeah, so after university, I moved to London actually, because whilst I was at university, I was also, as well as my languages degree, I was doing like writing, like freelance writing. So I was writing for kind of sports magazines and music magazines as well. And I figured that was something I wanted to get into. So I moved to London, I had some friends there, and I lived in London for a year. And I had like a temp job that turned into a job that was kind of like an office job. Wasn't really what I wanted to do, but I was doing freelance writing at the same time. But I guess the grim reality of freelance writing is that you're not getting paid. So I was getting free CDs and I was getting free entry to Fabric and all the other London clubs whenever I wanted to, which was great as a 21-year-old in London, but it wasn't, paying any bills. So I kind of carried that on as a hobby, but moved back to Manchester. Realistically, when I was in Manchester, I was applying for kind of anything. I did have like the writing journalistic thing in my head, but I was looking at kind of adjacent industries as well. And that's where I kind of got my first job as like a office assistant in a research agency. And it was more luck than judgment that I ended up there. The agency was like a really interesting one. It was a research agency that dealt with like the cultural sector. So I was working with museums and galleries, and I had like big people like British Museum and National Portrait Gallery and people like that. So I basically was lucky enough to find an industry that I actually, I had no intention of being a market researcher or working in a research agency. Realistically, I kind of didn't know it existed. Like it's one of those things. I always think it's funny when you're doing like kind of careers. I remember at school we had this thing, and it would ask you loads of questions about what you liked, and then it would spit out a job that you should, and it would be the most random job, like a baker or like something that just completely unrealistic. Whereas this industry was something I didn't really know anything about, but I was lucky enough to fall into it. And from there, I just found something that I was, I realized that I did like solving problems. I did like talking to people. I was kind of naturally curious enough to want to kind of find out the answers to the problems that people were kind of coming to us with. So I worked there for, I think, eight years, and lucky enough to have 6 months of that in New Zealand as well, when they opened an office in New Zealand. So did a bit of touring, working in Australia and New Zealand as well. Then I realized that I kind of was, that if I wanted to kind of move to kind of what might be more of a dream job in sports or media, etc., I probably have to diversify my skill set a little bit. So I moved to an agency that was a lot more commercial, and got like amazing experience there of working on entirely different types of clients and projects and methodologies, and did that for 18 months and I wasn't planning on leaving, but then saw this job description for this job. And if I'd had to write a job description, it would have been that. It was one of those where I was just kind of, I saw it and thought, oh God, if I don't get this, then now what am I going to do? But was lucky enough to get it. So and that was kind of coming up to 10 years ago. So I kind of fell into the research sector, but then really enjoyed it, and kind of stayed in it, and was then able to kind of move as I worked in it more, moved towards kind of specializing in an area that I was really kind of passionate about, which was sport. But I guess it was lucky it was Manchester City, but I would have worked in any sports team or club or retailer or media, and everything was on the table at that point. I wasn't just like, it's Man City or nothing.
That's amazing. I think particularly when you mentioned coming out of university with French and Russian language degrees, a lot of people have been thinking, how on earth did he become the head of research from that background? But it sounds like a naturally curious mind coupled with a research entry-level role has been an excellent combination for you. I'm just curious in terms of your career growth, has that come with any sort of proactivity, or have you just always tried to be the best researcher that you can and the opportunities have come from that?
Yeah, I mean, I think like what's happened specifically at City over in the last kind of 10 years was that the research team started really small. Like when I started, it was just me and one other person, and now the team is huge, is much bigger. There's kind of like 15 of us or whatever in the analytics and insights team. And honestly, I've never been kind of that person. I probably should have been more, but I've never been that person to like really, really kind of try and chase like a new role or a promotion or something. I knew that I was doing something that I loved, and I was never having like those Sunday night blues where you don't want to go in the morning and you're dreading it. And like, I think the progression just kind of came naturally, and I let it come naturally. And it's been good. It's been great. Like the opportunities have come up, and that City kind of provide those and provide the pathway to those kind of new opportunities. But there's been times where I could have kind of moved to a different team in the business, or like gone to a somewhere else for a promotion probably. But I realized that I like doing what I do, and that's more important to me, I think, at that point than kind of a title. And I've ended up, I guess, in a way having both. But I have been here 10 years, so it's not like an instant thing. I've kind of worked for it, I guess.
Mm. It's still really good that you've got that self-awareness to know what's most important to you, because I think some people would make literally career-changing decisions based on, what's hot at the time. Last question for you, and you mentioned that you've been here for close to 10 years. What have you enjoyed most about working at Man City for nearly 10 years, and what's kept you around for that long? Yeah,
so I mean, I think what I really like is like the autonomy that we have as a team, and like we're kind of, I think it's fair to say like we're seen as like a really kind of trusted part of the business now, and we haven't got someone kind of looking over our shoulder on every single thing we do, and that filters down through the team as well. I think it's like a culture that we have within our team, especially like we're given the opportunities to innovate and try new things and fail. And it's okay to fail. It's not the end of the world. You're not sacked if something you tried hasn't worked, as long as it's kind of thought through and, there's reason and rationale behind it. So I love that, like the autonomy of being able to kind of understand what the business objectives are of the organization, and then like choose our own path to get there. And the same for our team as well. So understand how our team wants to, where we want to get to, but then we're kind of given the freedom to try new things and try new methodologies and work on projects that we're interested in, or, even kind of work on things outside our team that don't contribute to our everyday job. So, for example, we have like a sports book club that someone in our team has started, where every couple of months we read a new sports book, and then we all get together and we talk about it. And, it's nothing to do with the kind of the role itself, but you're given the time and the financial resources to be able to kind of run that for yourselves. And there's lots of opportunities to do things like that, like outside of like your role. Like there's just lots of things beyond the kind of the day to day. But I guess, I mean, the other like obvious answer is that it's like an unbelievable time to be working at a club like this, especially as a fan. Like, it's absolutely unprecedented levels of success, like on the pitch, but also off the pitch as well. If you look at like the levels of fans we have, and the kind of level of the kind of content that gets created by the club, it's unbelievable. So it's an amazing time to kind of to be working somewhere like this.
Amazing, mate. Well, it looks like you're living the dream. Well, Tom, thanks so much for taking the time out of your day to chat about your job and go deep into what's involved and how you guys do what you do. I think it'll be very insightful for a lot of other people working in sport around the world to understand the level at which Man City are operating at to achieve the results on and off the pitch that they do. So, I appreciate you coming on the podcast.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
And for people who want more of this type of content, I'd encourage you to go way back to episode 83 and 85, where we did a 2-part episode with Jay Lee, who is the Senior Vice President of Product at the NBA, and his team is responsible for developing the NBA app and the NBA Live Pass. So if you want more on that, go and check it out. Hey friends, one last thing before you go. If you really want to make an impact in sport, then subscribe to the SportsGrad newsletter. Inside, we share all the latest job openings and networking events, so you're always aware of opportunities to land a job and grow your network. Plus, we share a Q&A with a professional on how they grow their career in sport. Here we talk about things like how they moved overseas or negotiated their salary or landed a new job or promotion, made a career change, and so much more. It's kind of like a little boost of inspiration in your inbox before the weekend. So if you're like us, you're career driven and you're keen to progress quickly, you're going to love the SportsGrad newsletter. To get it, head to sportsgrad.com.au/newsletter to subscribe or follow the link in the show notes. See you next time.